Barnes, and you're watching NewsX World. Let's first take a look at some of our top stories. Syrian tribal fighters have entered the Druze majority city of Sweda, which has seen sectarian clashes with hundreds of casualties reported in recent days. This comes after Israel and Syria agreed to a ceasefire following Israeli strikes over the violence. A war monitor says nearly 720 people have died in a week of fighting in the Druze majority Sweda, this including mass executions. The dead include Druze fighters, civilians, government troops and Bedouins, with Israeli strikes also killing 15 soldiers. At least 50 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks near Gaza food sites, according to local officials. Reports suggest dozens more have been rushed to the Khan Yunis hospital, as the World Food Programme says that thousands are on the verge of catastrophic hunger. An unidentified drone has reportedly killed a PKK member in Iraq, injuring another in the first attack of this kind in months, that according to local officials. It comes after the PKK pledged to lay down their arms and transition into politics. The DRC and Rwanda-backed M23 rebels have signed a ceasefire deal in Qatar, committing to end fighting in eastern Congo. The agreement follows a separate Congolese-Rwandan peace pact signed last month in Washington. South Korea's jailed ex-president Yoon Suk-yeol faces new charges over his 2024 martial law declaration. Prosecutors say he abused authority, erased records and blocked arrests during the crackdown. Donald Trump has filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, its owners and Rupert Murdoch over a report linking him to Jeffrey Epstein. Wall Street Journal owner Dow Jones says it stands by its reporting and will vigorously defend against the defamation claim. And Russia reportedly launches over 300 drones and 30 missiles overnight, hitting Odessa and causing blackouts in the Sumy region. Ukrainian officials say one person has died with a residential building set ablaze in Odessa during the attack. Meanwhile, Moscow says its air defences have intercepted 13 drones in a separate Ukrainian overnight attack. Well, we start again this hour with Donald Trump, who has filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal's parent company, Dow Jones, and its owner, Rupert Murdoch. He says they led by publishing a fake story that claimed he sent a bawdy birthday note to Jeffrey Epstein in 2003. The US president claimed that the publication slandered him and violated libel laws. Trump said the note, which the paper reported he had sent for Epstein's 50th birthday, is fake and called the article false, malicious and defamatory. The Justice Department has also asked the judge to unseal grand jury materials from the 2019 Epstein case, calling it a matter of public interest. The department is also seeking transcripts from the case against Epstein's associate Ghislaine Maxwell. Trump supporters are demanding more transparency in regard to the case. Lawmakers from both parties are also backing a move to force the release of more Epstein-related documents. Well, we now head to the Middle East, and Gaza's Civil Defense Agency has said that Israeli attacks have killed at least 50 Gazans and wounded more than 100 near two aid centres in the south of the enclave. According to agency spokesperson Mahmoud Bassal, 22 were killed near a site southwest of Khan Yunis. Another 4 were killed near another centre northwest of Rafah, with further deaths reported in the region. Bassal blamed Israeli gunfire for both these incidents. The Israeli military has said that it was looking into the claims. Let's have a listen to some eyewitness statements.
على شارع الطين عشان نستلم المساعدات الأمريكية من مؤسسة غزة الإنسانية. عادي كل واحد لبس غياره واخذ كيس عشان ناخذ مونت اليوم ونروح. رحنا قالوا لنا فتحت، وصلنا الحجار تعوت البطون تعود تحجر المدخل الاول، طلعنا الدبابات، فكرنا احنا بالناس بدها تنظمنا عشان نخش نسلم، ما اكتشفنا انهم جايات الجبات من الشقه والدبابات من الشقتين وطبوا طخ فينا عن ولا، يعني مش تقول انه بطخ انه يخوفك انه قاعدك، لا هو قاصد انه يقتلك، هو لو بده ينظمنا لنظمنا، بس هو قاصد يقتلنا.
هذا المكان مش مساعدات، هذه مصيدة علم، هذه مصيدة بس، هذه مصيدة للموت. أي واحد بده إياه بيسيبوه بس، أي واحد. هذا ماليش ذنب، هيا بن عمي ماليش ذنب، ماليش ذنب. رايح بده يجيب ياكل بده يعيش على زينا زي هالناس حالنا.
Well, deaths of people waiting for handouts in huge crowds near aid distribution sites have become an occurrence seen more regularly in Gaza, with the Palestinian authorities blaming Israeli fire for the deaths. Well, joining us to discuss these reported deaths around aid sites is Yossi Kapoasa, an Israeli intelligence and security expert who is joining us from Tel Aviv. Yossi, as always, thank you for joining us. I also just want to clarify some information we're flashing on scene is slightly outdated. Reports now suggest that at least 50 people have died around aid centres today. Yossi, we've spoken before on this programme about this potential issue with reports from multiple groups, eyewitnesses and local authorities saying that deaths around aid centres are continuing to happen. The UN said that at one point it was nearly 900. We've also heard from Israeli officials that they will work harder to prevent this type of death. Do you think that enough is being done by the IDF forces to try and limit deaths at civilian help points?
First of all, thank you for having me. Secondly, I'm quite certain that the IDF is doing the necessary lesson learning from what's happening over there, because our purpose with letting the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation supply food to the people of Gaza is to make sure that the people of Gaza are better off. That's the logic behind what we're doing. And it's definitely not in order to kill civilians who are trying to get food. So those who are against this happening are the Hamas and their supporters. So it makes no sense that Israel is going to kill the people of Gaza that are coming to collect food from the organization that we have let and encouraged to supply them with this food. This sounds very strange. Now, there were two cases in which people were killed because of Israeli fire, mainly because there were people from within the crowd that were running towards the Israeli soldiers that are overlooking the situation. And they felt under threat. But I don't know if this was the case right now. As the army is saying, they are investigating, find out what exactly happened. I don't know myself from here. Difficult to know what exactly took place. We know that yesterday, for example, there was a case where Hamas was causing trouble in the lines for food, and this caused a stampede that killed a couple of people. It's a dangerous situation, and we are trying to learn and improve the situation.
Yes, Yossi, of course, I'm glad you alluded to the difficulty of this situation. Of course, Israel have persistently said that aid is getting into the hands of Hamas and assisting them in their continued fight against Israeli forces. Hamas, of course, who started this conflict with the October attack in 2023, October the 7th. Is there more work that does need to be done, though, introspectively by Israel, with reports of hundreds upon hundreds of civilian casualties around these aid sites? NGOs and charities have questioned the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and the safety of that operation. Questions continuing to be raised after further reports of deaths of civilians around these areas are coming almost on a daily basis. I understand it is a difficult situation, and of course the IDF comment has been that we are investigating, but the investigations are happening and the reported civilian deaths are also still happening. At what point does a serious question get asked about not just the aid distribution, but the IDF actions around these aid sites?
As I said, I'm quite certain that it's not the IDF who's shooting at the people who are trying to get food from places that distribution centers that IDF has promoted and managed to make possible for the population to get food from. That makes no sense, just the opposite of what may happen. So this information should be taken with many grains of salt. And it's clearly that it is the interest of the Hamas and the aid agencies that work together with Hamas to create the impression that GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, is somehow involved in activity that ends up with the killing of civilian Palestinians.
Yossi, we are shorter of time, so I do want to interject just briefly before we move on. But after that UN report of hundreds of deaths in and around aid sites, the IDF did admit that instances had happened. So I want to pose that to you, that they acknowledge that mistakes had been made and that lessons would be learnt, but it doesn't seem that any lessons are being learnt if these reports are to be believed.
If the supporters are to be believed, then the pace with which the IDF is conducting its lesson learning process is not satisfactory. That's true. But we have to figure out who provide these reports and to what extent they can be relied upon. It's I would take them with caution, these reports. It's definitely the civilians are suffering on the way to the food distribution centers. That's clear. Who is responsible for that? This is, from some of the cases, these were mistakes made by the IDF. They admitted that this was the case. And some other cases, this was caused by other elements that are operating in the same area. And it's hard to say from right now, what happened to date. It's too early.
Yes, absolutely. You are right. Of course, we will wait for further information on these reported Israeli attacks. Of course, reporting is difficult within the enclave, given the limited number of non-Gaza reporters in Gaza. But we will, of course, continue to monitor any developments that we get. Yossi, you will be staying with us as we stay in the region, but move over to Syria, where the government has declared an immediate and comprehensive ceasefire in Sweden after nearly a week of deadly fighting. Over 940 people have died in clashes between armed tribes and Druze fighters. Damascus warns that any truce violations will be seen as attacks on national sovereignty. Israel and Syria reportedly agreed to the ceasefire under US mediation. Syrian security forces are now deployed in the region. The UN has called for an independent probe into the violence and worsening humanitarian crisis. Let's listen in to a Syrian tribal fighter in the region.
نحن عشائر يا عمي ضد الهجري واتباع الخنازير. نحن اليوم رايحين لبيوتها نص بيوتها مثل البحر.
Well, continuing with Yossi Kapoasa, thank you for staying with us. Of course, an announcement of a ceasefire, but uncertainty still remaining over fighting in the region. We heard there, of course, a short clip of a tribal fighter talking about the action. Let's first look at this ceasefire. How significant is it for you that this has been agreed with US supervision?
Well, it's very important to keep this ceasefire, and because it serves two concerns of Israel. First, the security of the Druze community and other minorities in Syria, but this case, the Druze minority that is living in the southern part of Syria. And secondly, we want to make sure that jihadic organizations and other terror groups do not deploy in southern Syria. And we hope that this ceasefire will guarantee that this is going to be the case. And generally speaking, this is also the interest of the Syrian regime. So we hope he has an interest in making sure that the ceasefire stands. So far, we haven't been convinced that this is the case because, unfortunately, even though the regime says that he is interested in that, it seems that he cannot control the powers, the groups that are subordinated to him. And we have seen some groups of the jihadic organizations moving towards Sweden and trying to commit all kinds of attacks against the Druze over there. We'll see how this develops. We hope that the truce was going to stand.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, hope over that truce, but still uncertainty in the region for minorities in the Sweden region, of course, with a Druze majority. How unstable is that region and what could be the ramifications for the wider Middle East, given that there has been so much conflict? We've just spoken, of course, about Gaza as well.
Yeah, well, the area is very unstable. The Shah regime is not able to control all of the troops and the organizations that are subordinated to him, and it lacks enough power to govern all of Syria. So there's a lot of activities of organizations that are somehow affiliated with the regime but are not subordinated to him, and it's causing a lot of instability and dangers. And we hope that it's going to be able to control the situation, and it's going to show interest in really stabilizing the situation and moving towards more security and starting a process of reconstruction of Syria. If this is going to be the priority of the regime, then there's a chance of stabilizing the southern part of Syria as well, and building on the common denominators that we have with the common interest that we have with the regime, making sure that Iran is not present in Syria, making sure that Iran does not use Syrian soil in order to deliver weapons to Hezbollah. If this is going to be the case, then there's a chance that we shall reach more stable coordination and situation with the Syrian regime.
Yossi Kapoasa, as always, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing your insight. We will continue to bring you all of the developments from across the Middle East. But we move on now. And an unidentified drone strike has killed one member of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, also known as the PKK, and injured another near Iraq's Sulaymaniyani. Security sources and local officials confirmed the incident, calling it the first such attacks in months. The strike occurred on Saturday and has not yet been claimed by any group or government. The PKK is considered a terrorist organisation by Turkey, the US and the EU. Authorities are now investigating the source and motive behind this drone operation. Well, joining us on the programme is Jim Rice, a professor of international law, joining us from Vigan in the Philippines. Jim, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. Of course, some context, the PKK have recently vowed to down their arms, ceremonial arms handovers and burning of arms, just to signify that a move into politics is what is being looked at. But this report of a drone attack that has killed one person and injured another, how destabilising could this be in the face of a move that both the PKK and the Turkish government saw as a positive move towards diplomacy?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This all seems very murky. The facts don't seem to be definitive at this point. It's hard to know exactly what's going on in terms of the issue. I know that the Kurds have been struggling for autonomy in their region for decades and decades. They obviously deserve it. They've been allies of the West and the United States for many years, and they're constantly being betrayed, either by the Turks or by whomever. But in any case, it's distressing.
Yes, of course, and an area that has seen over 4 decades of fighting, with around 40,000 deaths reported. What's the importance of stability in this movement with such a large population of people potentially impacted, and also ramifications for the Turkish government too?
Well, obviously, if the Turkish government wishes to gain national unity and peace, they're obviously going to have to stop the oppression of the Kurds. And I believe that the PKK has shown themselves more than willing to lay down their arms and to try for peace. And it seems that that's not being reciprocated. I can't say definitively who the individuals are that are upsetting this balance.
Yes, and we will, of course, bring any update that we have on the potential source of this drone. Jim, thank you ever so much. You will be staying with us as we look now towards North America. And the Trump administration's cuts to US foreign aid have left critical water and sanitation projects abandoned across the globe. In 16 countries, 21 projects have been halted, leaving millions without clean water. In Mali, water towers meant for schools and clinics are left unfinished, while in Nepal, over 100 water systems stand incomplete, with thousands of supplies left behind. In Kenya, half-built irrigation canals now pose flooding risks. the halted aid is potentially putting lives at risk. In Congo, families are losing loved ones while fetching water, and in Kenya, open trenches could cause further harm. Experts have warned that these cuts may lead to even more instability, disease and extremism. The US State Department has resumed some funding, but the damage could already be done. Well, Jim, thank you for staying with us. Of course, Donald Trump's policy of Make America Great Again, putting America first and cutting some vital aid to other countries that are going through difficult situations, whether that's civil war, famines or natural disasters. It was always known that that could cause an impact. Now reports of quite how severe those impacts could be. Do you think that it's up to other countries now to also step up with waning US support on these communities and countries that are facing difficulty? And as we've mentioned, things could get much more worse.
Yeah, thanks for that. This seems to be a hallmark of the Trump administration, is to dismantle America's efforts at humanitarian aid across the world. This happened, as you recall, in January of this year when Elon Musk stepped in and gleefully tweeted that he had put the USAID into the wood chipper over the course of a week. So this is the kind of cynical cruelty that the Trump administration is determined to inflict upon poor people. This story that you just reported is new to me. The thing that I was noticing was just a few days ago, the U.S. government was forced to spend $100,000 US in incinerating aid that could save 27,000 starving children for over a month in terms of essential high nutrition biscuits. So again, it just seems to be never ending. In terms of your question, which is can other countries step up? I believe that they are. I believe that the Europeans, the Canadians are doing a great job, and they continue to do so. What I think is an incumbent on Americans is to realize the destructive nature of the Trump administration and to stop it in its tracks. And if I may be excused to pivot to another topic, Thomas, we were talking earlier about the issue of Trump's lawsuit for $10 billion against the Wall Street Journal. We've got to see this against the backdrop of his intimidating and thuggish attacks on ABC and CBS in terms of shaking them down for tens of millions of dollars for things that were not even defamatory, and sadly for those networks to give in to them. So these kinds of things need to be seen as a whole.
Jim Rice, thank you ever so much for your time joining us on both of those points. We move on now though, and China has officially started construction on a massive dam along the Yarlung Tsangpo River in Tibet, known as the Brahmaputra in India. Premier Li Qiang attended the groundbreaking ceremony on Saturday, with the project linked to China's carbon neutrality goals and economic ambitions in Tibet. Once completed, the dam could surpass the Three Gorges Dam, potentially impacting millions downstream in India and Bangladesh. The project, estimated at $167 billion, will include 5 hydropower stations and provide electricity to various regions. India has raised concerns, urging China to ensure the project does not harm downstream nations. Environmentalists also warn the ecological risks in Tibet's fragile environment. Well, joining us to discuss this is Andrew K.P. Leung, a China strategist, who's joining us live from London. Andrew, thank you as always for joining us on the programme. This is, of course, a topic which could have ramifications. Firstly, we are running shorter of time, just to let you know as well. Firstly, just a quick briefing on why this move is being taken by China and why it's a project that they're so keen to get going at such a high cost.
Well, one thing that's very important for China's survival as a nation is water, because even though China accounts for a fifth of mankind in terms of population, and in terms of geographic area, is the world's fourth largest country by territory. But in terms of water, the average fresh water availability of China is only a third of the world average. The world average includes the Sub-Sahara deserts and so on. So it is much below the world average per capita in terms of fresh water availability. And then this further compounded by the uneven distribution of water. There's too much water down south with a lot of flooding.
Yes, Andrew, we are facing network issues, but thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak with us. We will, of course, continue to monitor the developments of this dam under construction and the potential impacts. But we move on now, and Colombian President Gustavo Petro has made his second visit to Haiti this year. This coming as gang violence continues to spiral across the country. Petro's trip will be focusing on security, trade, education, agriculture and drug trafficking. He also announced the opening of a Colombian embassy in Port-au-Prince, which is now 90% controlled by gangs. Petro also pledged to help train Haitian police, which is battling deadly gang violence in the country. Haiti and Colombia are also cooperating on the ongoing probe into the 2021 assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse. Now it's time for us to take a look at the latest from the world of business. US President Donald Trump has signed a new law establishing regulatory framework for stablecoins, digital tokens pegged to the US dollar. The move marks a significant step towards making cryptocurrencies a mainstream method for payments and money transfers. Known as the Genius Act, the bill cleared the House with a 308 to 122 vote, gaining backing from most Republicans and nearly half of Democrat lawmakers. Staying in the United States, and Los Angeles has filed a lawsuit against Airbnb, accusing the company of facilitating price gouging during the wildfires that swept through Southern California back in January. City Attorney Heidi Feldstein Soto said the case involves at least 2,000 rental properties. According to the complaint filed in Los Angeles Superior Court, rates on Airbnb listings rose by more than 10% between January the 7th and 17th, potentially affecting over 3,000 properties. ExxonMobil has lost its arbitration bid to block Chevron's $55 billion takeover of Hess, but succeeded in delaying the deal by over a year. The move cost Chevron billions in lost oil revenue from Guyana and slowed the integration process, even as the acquisition now clears a major hurdle. OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, has announced a $50 million fund to support non-profits and community organisations. The fund is the first move following recommendations from a non-profit commission formed in April to guide OpenAI's philanthropic initiatives. Microsoft is to stop using engineers in China for tech supports of US military. Pete Hegseth has ordered a review. Microsoft said it will no longer use engineers based in China to support US military cloud projects following a ProPublica investigation that raised national security concerns. The report revealed that Chinese engineers had been assisting with sensitive Pentagon cloud computing systems while being monitored by US contractors known as digital escorts, who had security clearances but often lacked the technical expertise to evaluate potential cyber security risks. Well, that is all that we have time for, but we'll be back soon with more of your latest international news.